I just got an interesting email from one of our viewers in Europe who is a young dentist who is a restorative dentist, has been graduated a few years ago and has been practicing, really loves endo and does a lot of endo, but he feels like his game is just not improving and getting any better, despite the fact he's taken up multiple courses and done a lot of tutorials and read a lot of stuff, and he was interested to know whether it would be worthwhile at this stage in his career to take a little bit of time off and go back to school and study endo. And I thought that's a very interesting question, so why don't we try to answer that. In fact, let's go outside because it's a little bit too hot in here. All right, I think the one thing that is very clear here is the fact that there's probably no one advice that fits for everyone. You know, people have to be really familiar with people's circumstances and the details of their lives before they can actually give real advice. But what I can tell you is a little bit about the future of endo. Also, where I think some of the factors involved for making a decision like that come into play. Now, as far as I'm concerned, the primary factor to make a decision about going back to school is to consider going back to school a form of investment. Just like any investment, you have to kind of see what is the return on investment, what is the ROI on any specific amount of time and money you're going to spend to accumulate knowledge and skills in any area of dentistry. And while obviously for me, living in the US, doing endodontics has always been very fruitful and very well compensated, it really can't be said the same thing around the world, as I've come to realize, having now had a fairly large kind of following where the international groups have learned a lot about endo in different markets, in different countries. You know, how much of endo is being done by general dentists and restorative dentists compared to the specialists. To that extent, you really have to see what is the environment that you're going to be living in terms of supporting that of an endodontist. Because if you're going to end up investing a good deal of money in terms of getting an education in an area, you have to make sure that you're going to have the clientele in terms of restorative dentists or patients that are going to come to you directly for the procedures that are going to hopefully offset the amount of investment you're going to make in your education. Because remember, even if education seems to be less costly as it seems to be internationally compared to the US, where the cost of education is obviously incredibly high. I mean, I can see residents graduating from school now with over $500,000 of debt, and that's quite a bit just for student loans. You also have to realize that the time investment is also a big factor, and probably that's something that you can't really put a price tag on. So the opportunity cost of not doing restorative dentistry and ending up doing education for learning how to do endo has to be offset with what you're going to get compensated for once you end up getting a degree in your local area. So the first thing you need to do in these decisions is to first decide where are you going to practice and whether that practice in that particular locale, based on the compensation for the endodontic procedure, is going to be worthwhile considering the costs of time and effort you're going to put into it. Now, something else that's a good consideration to keep in mind here, and I'm assuming that you are already a good clinician, that you just feel like getting this kind of a training will polish up and finish up what you need to do to act like an endodontist. You just have to also consider the kind of a job position that you already have where you are practicing. If your current job already has a fairly good compensation, that's a big consideration in terms of sacrificing that to go and do a 2-year endo program. Also keep in mind that as a general dentist, if you learn to do several different procedures really well, especially again depending on your geographic location, that where endodontists are getting a lot of referrals from general dentists or not, that you might be better off having a more type of a diverse group of patients that you can cater to by doing both endo and restorative and operative procedures all in the same patients. But then again, if you are in an area where you think there is a need for an endodontist and that the dental IQ among the restorative dentists in the area is high enough that they would be referring patients to you to do your endodontic cases, so you'll have a schedule full of endodontic patients after you go through this training, then that would be a different story. So there are a couple of these factors, once again going back to the idea of the location being an important one. And then last but not least, it's very, very important to consider this last point, is that many people seek other adventures, jobs, and other activities to kind of try to address a certain ennui or a certain kind of exasperation about how things are going now. It's very important for me to kind of share with you that when I finished my endodontic program, for the first couple of years afterwards, I kind of felt like I had made a mistake and that endo wasn't really the right position for me, the right kind of job for me. And I felt that it was kind of repetitive and I was doing the same procedure every day. As previously, I had an interest in pros and surgery and a bunch of different areas of dentistry, and I felt like it was now being limited all of a sudden to just doing endo. And it was really interesting as it was a moment where I finally came to a realization. The problem here is not whatever jobs we do, the problem is really our attitudes towards what we do. Now, dentistry can be very frustrating, dealing with patients that are always afraid and they don't want to be there, obviously. That could really affect us emotionally. But it's very important to understand that at the very base of it, all aspects of dentistry is about helping people, whether it's endo, whether it's pros, surgery, or perio, or all different aspects. We're helping people, and so we really have to change our attitude about what we do, because I find so many people, and I witnessed this in college, people were changing, majors and going from one degree to another, and they were just kind of out there doing things without really addressing the real core issue of really being satisfied doing whatever that we're doing at that moment. And if we are not fully satisfied doing what we do, it seems like there is a never-ending kind of cascade of things that we're going to get through and change constantly without really ever feeling that level of satisfaction. You know, one of the things that I tell people is that in the Western cultures, people are always looking to be happy, and they're chasing this happiness as though if it's a rainbow, and obviously it's a mirage in the same sense as that you will never find happiness. Happiness is a spectrum, and what we need to do is we need to find the point that we call satisfaction, which is that right amount of happiness where, we are satisfied, and that's really the goal. So with the wrong attitude, we're constantly going to be unhappy about the things that we do. And I just want to, bring this back into the equation. Of course, this is not something, I'm sure all of you guys that are already doctors already know this very basic fact in life, but sometimes we forget the very most basic things, and it's a good thing to have a reminder that the answer to all these ennuis and problems and so on might not necessarily be another degree or another field or another massive investment in time and finance to buy another gadget or something really, really, over the top. Sometimes the answer is just changing your attitude and really seeing things from a different perspective. And once we do that, we can find that level of satisfaction, so that instead of always trying to look and changing things, we may find that, perhaps the answer is not in moving forward, but in actually increasing the width of the things that we're trying to get out of life. If you're already practicing, you may want to consider that before you want to go back and invest into a couple years of education to do another field and find out possibly that it really wasn't the answer for you either. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents on the subject. I hope the video was not too long or too basic for many of you who already know this. I'm sure it would help some young person out there that is in a position to make a decision like this. But whatever decision you make, stick to it and believe in it. And I'm sure all of you will be successful in the way that you overachievers are. And with that, for everyone to know, I'm Ali Nasseh, and I hope you found this video helpful.